We're back at it again with another Battlefront update. It's crazy to think how much has changed in the world in only a span of a few days. And with the coronavirus having some sort of impact on every single industry, the question a lot of Battlefront players are asking now is how will this affect Battlefront 2 and the future updates? And this news update will be answering exactly that. As well, in addition, go over some of the latest news bits and pieces regarding the upcoming March game update that we're all patiently waiting for. Such as what are some of the next bug fixes, DICE's answers on if they'll be reverting ARC troopers back to how they were before in the new update, and even diving into the truth behind the Starfighter tease for the Age of Rebellion Supremacy mode. As always, we'll be covering all of this and more in today's video. And before we get into any of that, but a quick reminder, as if you do like these type of videos, then do remember to give it a like to show your support for not only this update series, but also the content within it. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Starting things out, we'll first be going over today's most important news story, and that is the coronavirus and how it will affect Battlefront 2 going forward. As everyone is well aware, the coronavirus is already massively affecting the entire world, with school closures, public events, and sports leagues being suspended, postponed, or cancelled, the stock market crashing, and even entire nations virtually shutting down. Thus, it's no surprise that it's going to be a while until things will be back to normal. Fortunately, DICE acted pretty fast in responding to the virus scare, and last Wednesday issued a statement saying that all their employees will be working from home. Not only that, but they'll also be helping other small and big game studios in Sweden on how to go about doing this. With that said, DICE did make it also clear that this will slightly impact game updates for Star Wars Battlefront 2, just like other DICE games. In fact, we should also expect to see some slight postponements in the time ahead. So while yes, thanks to DICE allowing their employees to work from home, that they'll still be able to develop content for Battlefront 2, however, this doesn't necessarily make things easier on them, as everyone working from home is by no means a better process of doing game development than, say, working next to each other in the same location. So that explains why future updates will unfortunately be slightly impacted, and we should expect to see some delays here and there. Of course, that is still for sure better than DICE not working on the game at all and no updates coming out in the foreseeable future. There is some good news here though, as according to Ben Walk, it doesn't seem, at least at this point in time, that the March game update should experience any delays. Which makes sense, as DICE have been working on all this content before the coronavirus scare even started in Sweden. So by now, they've most likely have finished all of the heavy lifting for the game update, and finishing everything else shouldn't be too much of a problem through remote work. Granted, this still could easily change in the coming days, but for now, it's quite possible that the next game update should still be releasing by the end of March. However, the bad news is the Clone Wars content DICE were expecting to be working on after finishing the original trilogy season, as many of us were hoping to be seeing the likes of Ahsoka and Ventress headline the next Clone Wars game update in potentially April or May. But due to the coronavirus, seeing that happen without any delays is looking unlikely at this point. Which is tough to hear, but safety comes first, and we've got to give DICE props here for allowing the devs to continue working on the game from home, as there are surprisingly a lot of companies out there still who are making their employees come into work, and I applaud DICE for putting safety of their devs as the priority first here. And if that means delayed content in return, then well tough, then so be it. With our main news story done, we'll next point our attention toward the March game update in itself, as we've got some more news tidbits on what it should and shouldn't include. For bug fixes, we've already received confirmation from Ben that the March game update will feature a fix for the bug that causes the game to be searched in several different game modes at the same time. While not something experienced by everybody, those who do get this bug practically are unable to play the game online. So without a doubt, this will be great news for them. Next, another issue that should be dealt with in the March game update is a visual one in co-op, and that is the AI appearances for both Han and Lando on the Yavin 4 map. Because if you played Yavin 4 on co-op recently, then you'd likely noticed both Han and Lando donning their young appearances from Solo, which obviously is wrong and dare I say not canon. because when they were at that age, the Rebel Alliance didn't even exist yet or even have a base on Yavin 4. So yeah, it is strange how DICE sought to fix the incorrect appearances in co-op within the last patch to only create new problems like this. Not sure how that happened, but glad to hear they're gonna be fixing it. That being said, it should be pointed out that last Wednesday's patch did in fact enable a brand new skin for the Rebel AI officers, which is actually an unused appearance previously only seen within cutscenes but not actual gameplay. So with DICE giving the AI in co-op a new skin, then it makes me wonder if they're also gonna give players this new Rebel skin in the March game update too. I mean, it's definitely a possibility, especially if the Imperials are getting new appearances like the Shore Trooper, so it wouldn't surprise me to see DICE enable this Rebel skin for players too. Another thing players were left surprised and wondering about the March game update is whether or not the original trilogy era Supremacy mode would contain Starfighters or not. Since it's been confirmed that DICE will not be doing a capital ship phase for that era, then some folks have started speculating that they'll maybe replace that phase with something else. And that speculation resulted in people thinking that maybe, just maybe, Starfighters could get involved in that mode. Especially since we do see a TIE fighter flying in the trailer for the Age of Rebellion update. Of course, this got many people excited, and I myself have been wanting DICE to include Starfighters in Supremacy mode way back when it was still called Capital Supremacy, with Geonosis as the only map. So naturally, advertising something like this in the trailer would lead people to ask questions about it, right? But the answer we all got to this is a disappointing one. EA community staff member Kevin Johnson responded to this by saying that, at least to their knowledge, this is only trailer flair. These trailers are almost always receiving a little bit of flair in some places to complement the on-screen choreography, as it gives a nice touch. So there you go, unfortunately no, Starfighters in Supremacy mode is still unlikely to be a thing. Moving on, with all the talk that has been surrounding the ARC Troopers' recent changes from a dual shooting system to only a single shot system, as well the news that they would be getting some tweaks here and there in the next game update to help improve and bring them back to their former glory, this in turn has resulted in some speculating that DICE could potentially also maybe revert the ARC Troopers back to the way they were before entirely. Especially with all the backlash they got now due to the change from a very vocal part of the Battlefront 2 community. In response to this, Ben squashed the speculation and rumors via Twitter, stating DICE are definitely not changing the ARC Trooper to the way it was, and instead will be looking to give him more power. So yeah, expect a buff to come for the ARC Trooper in terms of making his pistols do more damage, but the single fire shoot system will be staying whether some people like it or not. As for why DICE have no plans or care on reverting the ARC Trooper back, despite not everyone being a fan of the new changes. Ben in response went into DICE's mentality and reasoning behind this decision with some more detail. He said, "Feedback is always welcome, but sometimes we will do what we feel is best. That's our prerogative as developers. We have a track record of listening and acting upon requests of the community, but that's not to say everything we do has to come from the players. If we only did what players asked for, we'd have never got co-op, for example, and we'd probably still be making nothing but Clone Trooper Battalion appearances." Now, whether you agree with him or not about changing the ARC Trooper back, you've got to admit, had DICE only continued to listen to the vocal fans in the community, then we would have never had gotten the sequel trilogy Supremacy mode, now the original trilogy content, and even the BB unit droid heroes, and say what you will about them, but hey, they without a doubt bring something new, different, and unique to the game. Lastly, I did want to very quickly mention that Ben did change his Twitter banner recently to one featuring Jyn Erso. And while I'm not saying this means we're getting Jyn as a new hero in the March game update, I do however want to remind everyone that Ben in the past had clone commandos, ARC Troopers, among other things as his Twitter banners before they officially came out in the game afterwards. So could this be another incredibly subtle tease by Ben for Jyn Erso coming in March to Battlefront 2? Well, I'll leave that up to you to decide. But that'll do it for this Battlefront update. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel to not only support it, but keep up with Star Wars news, gaming, and canon lore released every week. And consider following me on Twitter and Facebook to never miss out on the latest Star Wars content. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.